Okay, guys, so today's lesson is called Chapter 7.7, Factoring ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is actually very similar to Chapter 7.6. The only difference is that now we have a coefficient in front of x to the second power. So I'm going to be showing you how to factor out from standard form and factoring out so that it looks like it's in factored form instead. So we're going to get straight into the examples. The first one, the directions say factor out the GCF. So let's go ahead and write that down. Factor out the GCF. So number one. Okay, the given says for number one, 5x squared plus 15x plus 10. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to factor out the greatest common factor. And so we're going to look at all three terms and we want to find out what do they have in common? What's their greatest common factor? So you have to look at the variables and you notice how there's no variable here. So it's probably going to just be a number, right? So we have 5, 15, and 10. And what they have in common is, what do you guys think? You can tell me in the chat box. That's right. I see your hands. Very good, guys. So they have a 5 in common. So we're going to factor out a 5. So when you factor out a 5, the first term here, when you factor out the 5 from 5x squared, you're left over with just x squared. When you factor out from 15x, you're left over with 3x. And then when you factor out from 10, you're left over with a 2. Okay. So what we did was we factored out the greatest common factor out of the polynomial. Now we're still left with a polynomial that's still in standard form. We're going to have to change this polynomial into factored form. So we're going to leave the 5 on the outside, but now we're just going to concentrate on this polynomial and we're going to change it to factored form. So we are going to do that table that we learned the day before yesterday, where we have to find the factors of C. And in this case, factors of 2, and to give us the sum of B, which is 3. So we know it's going to be 1 times 2, which gives us the sum of 3. And so our final answer, we're going to keep the 5, but our binomials will be x plus 1 and x plus 2. And so that's what we're going to write here. X plus 1 times x plus 2. And now it's in factored form. And we're done, okay? Okay, so any questions about how we found the greatest common factor or how we factored out the standard polynomial? We're doing okay? Good, okay. If you come up with a question or you're not sure how I got a certain answer, just let me know in the chat box, okay? Or unmute. Number 2. The given says 8x squared minus 56x plus 48. Okay, on your own, I want you to find the greatest common factor. Go ahead and do that real quick. So we're going to factor out an 8. Okay, so when you factor out an 8 in the first term, what's left over is x to the second power. When you factor out an 8 from negative 56x, you end up with negative 7x. And when you factor out an 8 from 48, you end up with 6. Okay, now I can see that this polynomial is still in standard form, so we're going to change it to factored form. So we're going to say, okay, what are the factors of 48? That gives me a sum of 56. No, sorry, of 6 to give me 7. Sorry about that. So we have the factors of 6, which is 1 times 6, and then 2 times 3, and then we're done, right? We needed to give us a 7. And remember that the rule is when C is positive and if B is a negative, that means both of them, both of the binomials are going to be negative, right? So it's definitely going to be negative, negative. And we need it to give us a negative 7. And so the best one here is going to be the first one. So we end up with, you have to keep the 8. And then we end up with x minus 1 times x minus 6, okay? Okay, are there any questions here on how I got this answer? We're doing okay? Great, let's move on to number 3. So far, notice how x to the second power, there has not been a coefficient in front of it. We did at the given, but since we were able to find the greatest common factor, it gave us a polynomial with no coefficient, where letter A is supposed to be. And now we're going to see what happens when there is a coefficient where letter A is, okay? So this is going to be number 3. The given says 4x to the second power plus 13x plus 3. Now, because we have this coefficient here in the front, you want to find out what's the greatest common factor, right? So you notice here how you have 4, 13, and 3. They don't have anything in common. So you can't factor out a greatest common factor from that. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change this to factored form. But because there's a coefficient here in the front, we're going to use what I call is the shortcut. And sometimes I call it the rainbow. And I'm going to show you why I call it that. Okay. There's actually a long process of finding it, but it's kind of like trial and error, and you have to find all the possible factors. But I'm going to show you the shortcut instead because it's a lot easier, okay? So I call this the shortcut. And sometimes I'll say the rainbow. So here's how the shortcut works. I'm going to rewrite it. 4x squared plus 13x plus 3. Okay, are you guys ready? Here we go. Okay. The first thing is, I call this the rainbow because we're going to do this. We're going to do 4 times 3, okay? But before that, you're going to get this coefficient here in the front. And what you're going to do is you're going to just move it to the outside of the parentheses, okay? You just take it out. When you take it out, what's left over is x to the second power, right? And then I'm going to bring down b. I'm going to bring down the 13x. And then where c goes, that's where I multiply 4 times 3. And right here, we're going to put 12, okay? Okay, so now it looks like the examples that we did above, right? Where we had the greatest common factor, and in here we have to factor out this polynomial. So that's what we're going to do. Let's find the factors of 12 that give us the sum of 13. So I have 1 times 12, we have 2 times 6, 3 times 4, and you can already tell which one gives us the sum of 13, right? The one that gives us a sum of 13 is going to be the first one, 1 and 12. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it, and we're going to say 4, and then we're going to say x plus 1, like over here, right? And then x plus 12. Okay, but we're not done yet, because remember I told you about this 4? This 4, what we're going to do is we're going to use it and divide by that number to both of the constants there. Okay, now, do you see how over here, 12 over 4, it's like a perfect fraction and it becomes the whole number 3? But on this first part, it's a fraction 1 divided by 4. It's a fraction. We don't want to keep it as fraction. So here's the shortcut part. The 4 is not going to stay there. It's actually going to be moved to the front of x. So we end up with 4x. Okay. The 1 stays here, so it's plus 1. And then over here, because the 12 divided by 4 is the perfect fraction, you're going to just write it out as x plus 3, which is the answer when you do 12 divided by 4, okay? So this ends up being the final answer right here, okay? This is our polynomial in factored form. If we were to do FOIL, you'll end up with the given, okay? Now, when you practice this shortcut over and over and over, it's going to come to you naturally. Right now, it might seem a little confusing, and that's because this is the first time that we did it. So we're going to try another problem with it, okay? And please trust me when I tell you that this shortcut is actually a very quick shortcut compared to the way that the book shows you. So, but if you're interested in seeing how the book shows you, you can check it out on chapter 7.7. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. We're going to try number 4. Any questions for me before we move on? Anything on this problem here? Okay, let's try another problem and see how it goes. Okay, so the given says 3x to the second power minus 7x plus 2. The first thing you should do is find the greatest common factor. Okay, what's the greatest common factor between 3x squared, 7x, and 2? You have a 3, 7, and 2. You don't really have a greatest common factor. So, besides 1, and we're not going to use a 1. So that was the first step, right? The first step was check greatest common factor. The next step would be when there's no GCF, that's the word when, there is no GCF, consider the shortcut. All right, so let's try that. So we're going to do the shortcut. The first thing is, let's get the coefficient out. And so we're going to keep 3 parentheses x squared minus 7x. But here on C, we have to multiply 3 times 2, which gives us 6. Okay. So far, so good? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to factor out this polynomial. So we need the factors of 6. So we have for sure 1 times 6. We have 2 times 3, and that's it, right? Okay, which ones are going to add up to 7? Well, for sure, the 1 and the 6. Now, the rule is when B is a negative, that means both of them have to be a negative. So we end up with 3, open parentheses, x minus 1 times x minus 6. okay? Okay, so because we're doing the shortcut, we're going to have to move this 3 underneath the numbers, okay? Okay, here it's a fraction. We are not going to keep it as fraction, so we're going to move the 3 in the front. So we end up with 3x minus 1, okay? Over here, we can divide 6 with 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that's what we end up with, x minus 2. And that's it. That's our answer in factored form. Okay, guys, please let me know if you have questions. Any questions here? The given says 14x squared plus 31x plus 15. They don't have a greatest common factor, so you're going to have to do the shortcut already, okay? So the first thing is we're going to do the shortcut, right? We're going to do this. Okay. So I'm going to bump out the coefficient, 14, and I have x squared plus 31x plus 210. So far, so good? Okay, now the factors of 210. Okay, we have 1 times 210, and I mean, you could go down the list, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I know for sure 21 times 10, and I'm going to choose 21 times 10 because I want it to give me 31, okay? So 21 times 10, I'm going to use that. So I have 14 times x plus 10 times x plus 21. Now, I don't have to put 21 first. It's okay that I put the 10. So it doesn't really matter which one goes first. Okay, so now I'm going to move this 14 to underneath the numbers. Okay, so we're going to have divide by 14 to both sides. Okay, here's where you notice how we have 10 over 14. It's a fraction that can be simplified. So because it can be simplified, you want to do that. We're going to simplify it by 2. That means the 10 is going to become a 5 and the 14 is going to become a 7. Now, I can't do 5 divided by 7, so the 7 is going to go to the front. So we actually end up with 7x plus 5. Okay? So anytime you get a fraction where you can simplify it and then move it around. Same thing here, 21 over 14. They actually have a 7 in common, right? So we're going to reduce it. So the 21 becomes a 3 and the 14 becomes a 2. Now we have the fraction 3/2, so we're going to move the 2 to the front. So we end up with 2x plus 3. And this is our answer in factored form. Let's try number 6. The given says 2x squared minus 7x plus 5. Okay, try this one on your own. And remember, if you get a fraction that needs to be reduced, reduce it, okay? So try this one on your own. This one should be easier to try. Okay, guys, are you ready? Let's see how you did. If you didn't finish it, that's okay. Just go ahead and follow along. Okay, so they don't have a greatest common factor, right? Between 2, 7, 5, and none of the variables. So we're going to do the shortcut. So I'm going to bump out the coefficient. So it's going to be 2 open parentheses, x squared minus 7x. And right here, we're going to do 2 times 5, which is 10. So the factors of 10 are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. And the ones that add up to a 7 are going to be the 2 and the 5. But because b is a negative, they're both going to be negative, right? Oh, Diego. Let's see. Let's see if you're right. So we're going to keep this. So we have 2 times x minus 2 times x minus 5. And then we're going to move the 2 underneath. Now 2 over 2, they cancel out and give you a 1. So we have x minus 1. And right here, you can't leave it as a fraction, so we're going to move the 2 to the front. So we have 2x minus 5. And Diego, you were right. This is the answer. Way to go. I hope you guys got it. If you got it, thumbs up. All right, that's awesome. If you didn't, that's okay. I mean, it just takes practice. Let's try the next one, number 7. Oh, did everybody write it down? Make sure you get it. Here we go, number 7. Okay, 3x to the second power minus 14x plus 8. Okay. You ready? You check for the greatest common factor first. Between 3, 14, and 8, they don't have a greatest common factor, and there's not variables that are common either. So we're going to do the shortcut. So to bump out the 3, we get x squared minus 14x. Now we're going to do 3 times 8, which is 24. Okay, the factors of 24 are 1 times 24, 2 times 12. Aha, I could use 2 and 12 to give you 14. And because it's a negative in the middle, they're both going to be negative. So we have 3, open parentheses, x minus 2, and x minus 12. We're going to move the 3 to underneath the numbers. So we have divide by 3, divide by 3. Here you can't because it's a fraction. We're going to move the 3 to the front. So we end up with 3x minus 2. Right here, we can simplify it. The 12 and the 3 become a 4. And we end up with x minus 4. And that's it. All right, what do y'all think? Good, good. Is it coming to you a little bit better? I hope it is. Okay, good. Let's try the next one, number 8. Okay, the given says negative 2y to the second power minus 5y minus 3. Okay. Do they have a greatest common factor? No, they don't. So what you could do here is notice how you have a negative here in the front. You can factor out a negative 1. So your greatest common factor could be the negative 1. We want to factor that out. That way our polynomials are all positive, right? So we're going to factor out a negative 1, or you could just put negative on the outside. So when you factor it out, you end up with positive 2y to the second power plus 5y plus 3. Okay, so that's going to be our greatest common factor, the negative 1, okay? Okay, so now you look here at our polynomial and you say, okay, I don't have any other greatest common factors, so we're going to have to do the rainbow, right? Now, because we're going to do that, you want to keep the negative 1 on the outside for sure. And then here, now we're going to do the shortcut. So right now, I'm just going to ignore the negative 1, but don't forget about it, okay? And so now we're going to do the shortcut here. So we're going to bump out the 2, and we're going to say y to the second power plus 5y, and then multiply here, and it gives us plus 6. Okay. So now we're just going to look at this part only for the shortcut. Don't forget you have a negative 1 here. It's going to keep going with you, but you're just going to leave it alone for now. Okay, so the factors of 6 are 1 times 6, 2 times 3, which one gives you the sum of 5? Well, 2 and 3. So now we have 2 times y plus 2 times y plus 3. Move the 2 underneath the numbers. Okay, 2 divided by 2, well, we know that's a 1. So remember I told you don't forget about the negative 1. So we're going to keep bringing it down. And then right here we have y plus 1. And over here we have to bring the 2 to the front. So it's 2y plus 3. And so here our negative 1 is still there in the front, and we're going to keep it there. And this is our answer in factored form, okay? Did I go too fast? We're okay? Any questions on this one? Okay, so whenever you do find a greatest common factor, you have to take it on the outside, but it has to stay and keep going with it, okay? And then you do the shortcut, but make sure you just leave the greatest common factor alone, but don't ignore it, right? You have to keep it flowing down. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, I need to move to another page. What would happen if you multiplied negative 2? Let's see. Where is that? At the beginning? Is that what you mean? So you could try it, but I don't think it'll work out only because we want to find the greatest common factor, and that negative 1, you want to take it out just so that the polynomial on the inside works out. And I think you're asking like if we did negative 2 times 3, right? And it gives you a negative 6. Yeah, that wouldn't work out because then your 5 would have been a negative, and I don't think it could have factored out. Because remember, if your C is a negative, then that means your binomials, one's a positive, one's a negative. So it wouldn't work out that way. So the rule is you have to factor out the greatest common factor first. Okay, let's go to number 9. Okay, let's do 3x to the second power plus 3x minus 6. Okay, what's the first thing you're supposed to check for? Check to see if they have a greatest common factor. Do they have a greatest common factor, or do we go straight to the shortcut? Yeah. What is their greatest common factor? That's right, 3. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Take the 3 out. Now, this is the greatest common factor. It's not the shortcut, so be careful. So we bump out the 3, factor it out. We end up with x squared plus x minus 2. Okay. Now, Do we have to do the shortcut here, or can we just do normal factoring? There's no number here in the coefficient, so we can just do the regular factoring, okay? That means the table, right? So what are the factors of 2? We're going to do 1 times 2 to give us the 3, right? Oops, to give us 1. But notice how C is a negative. That means one of these is going to be a negative. Which one is going to give us a positive 1? And that's the one you choose, because here's a positive 1. This gives us negative 1. We need the one that gives us a positive 1. So we're going to choose this one, okay? Okay, so now you keep your GCF, the 3. And then now we have x minus 1 and x plus 2. And that's it. So just be careful, because sometimes you'll use the shortcut and sometimes you don't have to. So here we didn't have to. Okay, number 10. Remember, we don't want a negative here in the front. That's what I meant. Yeah, we don't want a right here to be a negative, and that's why I factored out the negative 1 before. Good question. It's okay to have negatives in the other parts, but if a has a negative, that's when you factor it out. Yeah. Okay. Number 10. 2s to the second power plus 9s plus 7. Okay, what's the greatest common factor here? Do we have one? None. So what do we do to factor it then? Shortcut, that's right. Very good. So we're going to go ahead and do the shortcut. So I'm going to bump out the 2. And we have s squared plus 9s plus, okay, 2 times 7, 14. Okay, the factors of 14, we have 1 times 14, 2 times 7. And which one's going to give us the 9? The 2 and the 7. Okay, so we have 2 times s plus 2 and s plus 7. Okay, we're going to get rid of this and divide by 2 on the numbers. The 2 and the 2 become a 1, so we have s plus 1. And over here, we can't simplify the fraction, so you're just going to bring it to the front. And you get 2s plus 7. And that's our answer. Okay. Any questions on number 10? We're okay? Here's your assignment. We're going to do big ideas.